Prepare to be astounded and amazed. These are the introductory incantations in patter properly termed for a stage illusionist, known to some more adept at the art as a prestidigitator, or just for most an ordinary performing magician. An entertainment art form that dates back to the ancient Egyptians and Chinese. And in magic, things are never what they appear to be, just as all warfare, according to Sun Tzu, is based upon deception. While most particularly alpha male type personalities like to believe or present the image to others of being without fear, and most of those wanting to appear quite rational and methodological may wish to pretend that they are rather calm, cool, and collected. The fact is that most humans are just a little bowl of emotions waiting to spill over. And historically, even a man of science like Galileo Galilei, when brought before the leaders of the Inquisition, had capitulated rather than to sacrifice himself for some noble notion of devotion and duty to science. And being old, they needed only show him the instruments that would be his torture to recant, because he knew that science too. Similarly, pandemics are historically associated with times of confusion, fear, and despair, and dating back as far as the Assyrians. Tacticians have honed the art of exploiting the advantages of the fog of battle presented by biological phenomena, far too advanced for their adversaries to understand, and biological agents, historically and doctrinally, have been surreptitiously deployed, combining an extended timeline of surprise and discovery or detection for a first strike capability with plausible deniability. A perfect crime. The president had tasked the intelligence community to redouble efforts to determine the origins of the novel coronavirus. And at least for national security professionals and the military, intelligence drives the conduct of missions, or the mission cycle. And according to Army regulation, the purpose of intelligence is to provide commanders and staffs with timely, relevant, accurate, predictive, and tailored information about the enemy. Actionable intelligence, developing a refined picture of the threat and the battle operating environment. Not just collecting information for no purpose, but rather using information that can be translated into action to achieve results. Conversely, the discipline of counterintelligence, according to Army regulation, focuses on negating, mitigating, or degrading the ability of adversary forces to develop a clear picture of the threat or threat picture. And while positivity rates, case fatality rates, hospitalization rates, and even numbers of infections, hospitalizations, and fatalities may have some ancillary value, at least in calculating the battle damage assessment, an intelligence analyst would primarily be concerned with the specific capabilities of a biological agent to acquire a target and attack, placing priority on metrics such as secondary attack rate, which is the measure of infectiousness of the virus, or transmissibility in precise terms, as well as determining the infectious dose or the payload in quantifiable delivery units an adversary would be required to transmit to cause a state of infection that might give rise to casualties and fatalities. Actionable information. Fool me once, shame on you, they say, but fool me twice, shame on me. When it comes to secondary attack rate, this certainly appears quite tragically to be the case, finding perhaps many missing the forest through the trees, focusing upon the wrong priorities and degrading an ability to develop that clear picture of the threat, a counterproductive effort resulting only in defeating oneself or using counterintelligence against yourself. In this detached and analytical perspective, however calm, cool, and collected, it has been observed in the beginning that the average case fatality rate in China had been only 3.8%, hardly alarming, and had noted that even this had appeared to have been driven by the early epidemic in Wuhan, where numbers were higher, skewing results, and with the apparent finding of no wider community spread, atypical for a truly infectious virus. And after examining 19 times more cases in China than had yet to be reported in the entire United States by mid-March 2020, Bruce Aylward, the assistant WHO director, had reported that after his robust examination conducted by 1,800 teams of at least 5 epidemiologists had found not a lot of asymptomatic circulation at all of this virus in the bigger population, noting that in flu you'll find this virus right through the child population, right through blood samples of 20 to 40% of the population. Yet what they found in China was a secondary attack rate of less than 5%, 12 times too low to even be described as a highly contagious disease capable of a super spreader event, and equivalent to the acceptance rate at Harvard University for the 60,000 students that attempt to apply every year, and prompting their clinical conclusion on page 35 that it is not clear whether this correlates with the presence of an infectious virus at all. And so, if that is what the data actually says, why would anyone think any differently? This virus isn't stupid. I believe it's one of those ghostly manifestations that I've ever seen. Whether it's real or simply conjecture, one of those things that people seeking to find some mystery to fool themselves into believing, but with some other perfectly rational cause and explanation, is a question that only you can answer with your capacity for reason, which often involves research and study, not simply guessing. Impossible? So with Xeroxing and holography, just like a few short years ago, this was almost impossible. In fact, there were videotape replays, like the ones you're watching right now. People have been proclaiming the marvels of science for thousands of years. And maybe one day, we will finally discover the origins of this novel coronavirus. What a tremendous gain that would be for actual science. And what a tragic loss for storytelling. This message was approved by Major Mike Webb. Honest.